A lot of people are going to say this is 2 points dropped for Man City, but this in my book is firmly a solid point gained for Newcastle as they draw when Man City won each at St James's Park in a fantastic Premier League encounter that gives Newcastle that extra little bit of lift in the table to start to look at gunning down in those top four, top five positions in the Premier League this season. Without Alexander Isak, and again, another couple of absentees in the squad, which isn't really anything new for Newcastle over the last couple of years, they had to dig in deep, they had to find solutions where there were problems, and ultimately I think Newcastle, from the dugout all the way to all the players involved in the match, came out of this with massive pass marks. In the video today, we're going to have a look at what happened in the game today, what are the big takeaways, as well as what does this tell us for Newcastle for, the season going forward, with all of them talking about trying to win a cup and having a cup run on the go. They now look to face, Wimbledon in the cup coming up next. So it's potentially a result that can really kick off Newcastle into a very vital part of the season that could see them come out with something quite historic at the end. At any point in the video, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and get into the comment section and let me know what your big takeaways, what were your thoughts and feelings on the Newcastle game. Always interested to catch the comment section on these ones. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it. Because as soon as the team sheets came out, obviously Man City have got some huge absentees of their own, Kevin De Bruyne and Rodri and all the rest of it. But with Newcastle missing their main goal scorer, or the main marksman, Alexander Isak, the main focus was going to be on, really, what does the Newcastle front three do in this game? Can they be effective at the highest level against the toughest opponent in the league? And, for City as well, there's that little bit of, how do they get on in midfield? And I think the kind of preview, the analysis we did of this on the Deadline show on the channel on Friday was very evident to see from the very beginning. Newcastle did feel a lot stronger and a lot more imposing in the midfield area, and this front three provided a lot of energy and created a lot of space in the the Man City defensive section of the pitch, or the Newcastle attacking third, if you want to think of it as that. With Murphy, again, like every time I see this guy, he's coming out of pass marks every single time. He's a very, very good player, a very good operator, and a guy that plays the role very well. And although Man City did start the game a bit more comfortable, we've seen more of like Rico Lewis kind of floating forward into the pockets. We've seen Akanji and Kovacic kind of merge up here in midfield, and then Man City kind of make this, it's kind of like a two at the back with Walker and Diaz, and then Guardiola has equal amount of freedom to, you might say, the Rico Lewis, but he does have to start from a much deeper position. And this weird web that City build is awkward, and it's very difficult to deal with, and it's why a lot of teams do struggle against them. And this front three, as they were trying to figure themselves out, like where are they trying to play, what side of the pitch are they going to focus on, who are going to be the Man City solutions, who is going to do that Rodri role, who's going to try and carry De Bruyne's water, and while Man City are figuring that out, Newcastle are also figuring out, their front three, how they are going to best get the most out of each other. And I thought the energy that came from the front three very early on was very threatening, and you could see that Man City were definitely under a lot of pressure early on. They knew they were going to be in for a game if they forfeited possession, if they let Newcastle turn the ball over and try and play into space and behind them. So Man City took their time a little bit longer to actually try and build up, and because Newcastle are so well drilled and organised in these sorts of matches, they get into rank, and they get into rank very, very well, very quickly. The back four was like a back four, if you get me. Hall had a great match, I think. I think he was quietly brilliant in this match, and he did go into the final third. He did go up the line when required, as did Trippier, whose distribution today, at the point of recording, I thought was absolutely fantastic. But because we've got a real back four here, and then a midfield three of that 888 system that we spoke about on the channel before, they are like getting organised into the defensive section. Because they're so well ranked, and they hold their ranks so well, and they're so well drilled, Man City were just actually filling in between the lines here. And what's on screen now is maybe a slight exaggeration of the position. Maybe there was a little bit deeper from the defensive line and all the rest of it, but you'd have Haaland dropping into this space as well. You'd have Lewis, or you'd have Bernardo maybe dropping in deeper, trying to get in front of the midfield three to connect the ball and try and play it into blind spots and spaces. And it felt like for as long as Newcastle were always going to have this gap in between defence and midfield, City were going to get on the ball in dangerous areas. We're going to carve them open at some point, and like Newcastle, it just felt like we're going to maybe shoot themselves in the foot a little bit too quickly in this match for me. Because when you've always got a midfield that's going to go up and support the attack with the nature of the way all three of them play, if Man City turn the ball over in their own half and play it into space themselves, you've then got all of them running back, facing towards their own goal, trying to watch the runners, trying to cover the space. And you've not really got anyone that with confidence can step out, facing the ball and confront it. And for the first 20-25 minutes, this was really the source of all of Man City's chance creation for the most part. But the thing with Newcastle is they came into this match knowing their game plan and being really unashamable with it. And one of the things I've really enjoyed covering with Eddie Howe and Newcastle on the channel is how amazing they do against adversity, whether it be injury crises, fixture pile-ups, and you've kind of got a little bit of everything in this match as well, with Isak and another set of changes across the back four. The Newcastle back four's changed so often this season. But it was very end to end. It was actually quite a high tempo opening 25 minutes. I thought there was a little bit of a shout, by the way, for a Grealish handball off of one of those corners. I don't know if you caught that yourself, but no one gave it any time. No one looked at it, but it did seem like he kind of punched it out for a corner at one point. But I felt like City could feel what I'm talking about, and it felt like they got into this little bit of a false confidence where they started to put extra bodies forward. They let Akanji get a little bit higher. They were pushing Kovacic even higher. They were getting Guardiola to really run down this left-hand side as well and try and give Trippier and Schär and Tonali an extra player to deal with, an extra handful. And this was exactly what Newcastle were waiting for. The spring was wound. The trap was set at this point. And, we've seen this all game long, but we get the long ball. I'm sure it was from Bruno, breaking the line through for Gordon, who gets 1v1 with Ederson. You know how it ends with the penalty, of course. But that was the incision. That was the route to goal that Newcastle exploited all the way through the game. They let City get confident. They let them really fill into their half. And then, Newcastle scored the penalty. They go 1-0 up. But then what looked to be Newcastle's weakness of letting City fill in these lines here, and what City's strength seemed to be of being on the ball and really dominating the space and really building this web around Newcastle for a large portion of this game, quickly became Newcastle's strength of being able to suck them in. And then with how almost robotic Man City are with how they play, what positions they take up, and you can see time and time again how they are, that it is 11v11. You can only account for so many players, but in certain areas at certain times. And that predictability of Man City was exactly what Eddie Howe had sent this team out to exploit. The amount of long balls, the amount of long diagonal switches of play, the amount of line breaking, offside trap bursting runs that we've seen in this game was no accident, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware of by now. But it is a huge testament to the game plan and the deliberate, unashamable execution of it from all the Newcastle team, because it's easy to say, yeah, that's where the space is, go and find the man, but you need the ability, number one, to pull it off, and you need the conviction to know that your teammate's going to be there, everyone's on the same page, and you can make the most of it. And really, the amount of effort and the amount of actual training hours that must have went into this over the week, preparing for exactly how, because when you're in here, there is no room for error. City are going man for man with you in so many vital, dangerous areas where if you do lose the ball, and within one or two passes, they're going to be asking all sorts of questions of the goalkeeper. And I just found it hugely impressive. I did think, though, again, like I mentioned already, the addition of a more defensive-minded midfielder, someone that could step out from the defensive third, would have helped Newcastle a lot more in the first half. And very quickly, history almost repeats itself. There was a second penalty claim here for Newcastle that I really thought Joelinton was brought down unfairly. I thought the guy didn't touch the ball. I think he's 1v1 with the goalkeeper. I think it was in the box. And for me, for me, it looked a penalty. I really don't know why that one wasn't given. Happy to hear your thoughts and feelings on it in the comment section, of course. But one of the key differences in the second half that did result in Man City really seeming that little extra bit rattled is we've seen Tonali popping up in these areas a little bit more and giving Murphy that extra support. And Grealish is, honestly, he gets credited with an assist in this game. If Man City didn't pay so much money for him, I'm pretty sure he would have been out the door a season or two ago at this stage. He really is a very passive player. He doesn't really offer anything too distinctive or even that effective, it seems like. In the second half, that first 15-20 minutes after half-time, this area of the pitch is where Newcastle were starting to get a lot more joy and started to just generally exploit. And, there was a lot of joy that was coming out of this. And Joelinton, after that period there, kind of filled into that role that Newcastle were really needing. They were needing an extra guy to be a bit deeper and have the ability and have the, the authority to step out, break ranks and confront the ball. And, I think Ali McCoy's on commentary, if you watched it on TNT Sports or whatever, so many things I was about to write down, he was kind of saying. So, a lot of the analysis in the match was absolutely fantastic. But it did feel that then Man City have went into this game for about 70 minutes at this stage thinking, right, we can build up space here, we can get on the ball in these areas, and then all of a sudden Newcastle kind of flip the script a little bit, and Joe Linton can come in and, interrupt the ball, interfere play a lot more often with, the rest of the team like they were doing. Very resolute, very tight at the back. And on the 76th minute, we get like 2 or 3 players all going down with cramp. Newcastle need to make triple substitutions. Do you know what? They were decent like-for-like replacements, but you felt that in itself was a bit of a trigger, because then all of a sudden Man City and Guardiola bring on the wingers. And this is when the game for me really did show the desire, the commitment, and ultimately the quality that Newcastle have to, play in this match with the kind of restrictions that they have, like we've mentioned, but then hang in there in the vital moments of the game. There was 7 minutes of added time for this, so really the final 20 odd minutes of the game was all hands to the pump, make sure you never lose your man, stay switched on, know your job, know your role. And again, they'd really done it to the letter fantastically. And I think when it came to the 91st minute save from Pope, from Bernardo, that was one of the most incredible saves I think I've seen so far this season, and it further highlights what I've always said on this channel with Nick Pope, that he is the best English goalkeeper around. I think he is fantastic. He is a guy that, Newcastle, I've predicted them this season to finish 5th. Granted, I was quite high on Brighton's transfer policy when I did that prediction video, so I've got really no reason to doubt Newcastle can break into the top 4 again. Although I do think maybe 5th could have Champions League qualification anyway this season. It's got a bit wonky, and I always lose track of, is it 4th or 5th, because last season it was up in the air depending on results, and I'm not too sure, as I talk to you right now, exactly where it sits. And looking at the player ratings for this match, it's really clear to see that Newcastle really did limit the amount of successful actions that Man City were able to actually create, absolute goal scoring opportunities, successful final third penetration passes. Man City have finished this game with 62% of possession, but with an 88 pass accuracy, with having 735 touches of the ball. Like, it really does show you that, a lot of Man City's possession and a lot of their play was really nullified by Newcastle. It wasn't as productive as normal, because if Man City are getting high possession numbers and all those touches of the ball, generally they're putting 2, 3, 4 goals past a lot of teams. Newcastle keeping them to 1 here, which was, a bit of an anomaly situation in this match, where there was so much space down one hand side of the pitch where, a couple of players could overload it and get the shot on target away so close to goal. And really, like, Newcastle come out of this for me with huge pass marks, and it's great to see that after, the way last season finished domestically, this season was always going to be one that's going to be so important to the Eddie Howe legacy at Newcastle in this era of Newcastle's club development. Everyone's talking about the trophy win, like we spoke about in the intro, but getting back into European football, getting back into the Champions League, these are things that are firmly at the top of the agenda for Newcastle this year. And if they are going to do that, they were always going to have to replicate their defensive resilience that we've seen 2 seasons ago. And this match for me was an absolute hallmark of that. And without Alexander Isak, they still looked so threatening in attack all the way throughout this game, no matter really who was on the pitch. I had a great time watching this one, and I'm going to look forward to catching Newcastle again throughout this season. I hope you enjoyed the video today, guys. On screen there now some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, jump into the comments and let me know your thoughts. Stay out of trouble, and I'll catch you on the next one.